Hey everybody, welcome to Season 3 of Song Revolution. Get ready to ramp up your songwriting. Hey everybody, back again with another episode of Song Revolution. I hope that you are keeping up. We have so much material here. It's like an embarrassment of riches. We have our first Monday of the month free songwriter training. You can find that link in the song notes. We have the archives here of all the podcast episodes since 2017. It's just a cadre of information, inspiration for you, insights that I think will help you if you just pay attention. So show up. Let's get going. You're late for work. I'm so excited to have back on the show today a dear friend of mine, Andrew Greer. Andrew is a filmmaker. His documentary, Plain Spoken, about the city of Plains, Georgia, and the life of former president, the late president, and Mrs. Jimmy Carter. It's a wonderful documentary that I hope you'll check out. He's a producer, he's a songwriter, he's an artist, and he's just a very deep thinker. And in our show from last time, we went all the way from Original Sin to who knows what. But I wanted to have Andrew back. So, Andrew, thanks for being back.
Yes.
With us on the show today.
A cadre of information. I love that phrase. I hope someone describes me that way one day.
You're a virtual cadre.
Yeah, I don't know if it's worthy information, but I got a lot in there.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Well, you and I have been acquainted a couple of years.
Yes.
You came into the studio and produced a couple of songs, and I just knew that we'd be besties and just a lot of similar interests and the way that we just approach life and creativity. And you're a deep reader and deep thinker. Maybe that's where we started in the last show. Okay. I know we did talk about Plain Spoken. Sure. It's a lovely documentary. I really was moved by it, and I have revisited it as well as your music. And why don't we start with maybe I'd like to start talking about books. We were talking about books a moment ago. I've been quite the book collector. I think I have everything N.T. Wright has ever written. Yeah. I haven't read all of it, but they're thick. They're thick.
You gotta dig in.
Yeah.
It can be, there's the authors we're supposed to read, right? As thinking Christians or even just thinking spiritual people, spiritual beings. And I mean, I run the gamut. I do feel like a lot of inspiration comes from reading for me. I will struggle to binge a television series. I do like to watch TV and film, but I'll get antsy if it's a matter of hours of doing that. But I have recently, probably for the first time in my life, though I've always read, loved to read, made time to read, as I've been simplifying my own life. I think I'm a minimalist by nature, but I haven't always lived a minimalist life, and especially in the sense of my schedule. And so the move, like we talked about last time, to Plains, Georgia, a town of 500 people, which of course the documentary introduced me to that place. But it's a quieter life, it's a slower life, it's an exciting life, and it's a communal life. But it is different than having lived in Nashville. And what I found is that I have the opportunity of days, on the books, if you will, that have nothing scheduled. And I find that to be so refreshing to my mind and to my spirit, but something I've dedicated a few of those days to do. As they come up, I don't think way far out anymore. I'm thinking more tomorrow and the next week to allow myself to have margins and availability to the people around me. And it's not just me being available to them, it's us being available to one another. But as I'll read an entire book in a day, I'll give myself over to a book in a day. Now, it has to be the right kind of book. I don't know that you could get through an N.T. Wright book in one day because
oh my gosh, the
you
life of Paul.
Stop.
Oh my gosh, I know.
But a memoir or a well-written memoir, or like one of my favorite authors is a guy named Kent Harif, and I could read. He's now deceased, but I could read his books from start to finish in a day. So the luxury of books is something I hope is a part of the fabric. Well, that the idea that I will encounter new thoughts, new ideas, new ways to describe things, new ways of expressing things within a different book every time is kind of to me, like tapping into the infinite nature of ourselves. And of course, that's the infinite nature of God as established in and through us. So that gets me like if I have a little fear of eternity or living forever, I have no clue what that looks like, but nor do I think I don't know who does, but I think there is this instinct that we know in our relationship with God that we have been created to be forever and in communion with Him forever and in communion with Him at some point in a more right or perfect way. But that's a scary thought sometimes because like I'd love to take a nap in a black hole, just like give me a break, right? But when I tap into those good days of community with each other that wasn't planned or isn't an event that was perfectly executed, but just being together or finding a day to be outside and read a book all day, that's when I get excited about living forever. The idea that we could never get to the end of our knowledge, never get to the end of the stream of life, that is being fed into us through all different kinds of sources. And of course, I think all that leads back to God when it's things that are pure and holy. But anyway, I don't know. So I don't know how I got off on that.
No,
but
you went really cosmic there, but I loved it because
that's right.
I mean, the scripture that says all things are from, through, and to God, and we cannot explain the mystery of our very being, the weightiness, the Old Testament Hebrew kavod, the weightiness, we might say gravitas of our very being. Sometimes we get existential angst historically, classically, because we can hardly bear even that idea if we go deep into that. And it's just, I love how you were talking, the infinite nature that we are. I think it was Catherine of Genoa who said, if the deepest part of me is God, and you can't tell, we can't tell, we know somehow we've come from God, and we are experiencing this temporal modality of a body, and then at some point we lay down the meat suit and we are back in that infinite, timeless, eternal place that defies all mortal description.
Yes, which is very scary to evangelicals, of which I may be one in some form or fashion. So it's not a criticism to that group, but and I don't, how does one person define it compared to another? It could be very different. But what I would say is that need to be certain in our faith, which then by nature doesn't require faith. If we're certain, to me that I don't want to, this is my opinion and my interpretation of spirit life and my experience, but to me the most blasphemous thing, the most blasphemous expression of our faith is actually not expression of our faith at all. And that's, if I need to be certain of it all, to have faith, I actually think I'm blaspheming God in some ways because I'm limiting Him. I'm saying you're a creature I create.
Yes.
And that's just not true.
Oh my God.
And I don't even want it to be true because, I mean, that makes me anxious just thinking about that I would create the things that set the world into like I know within my instinct, my intuition within myself is I am not in control. And I don't, even like saying God is in control, yes, and understand that statement from the sake of everything's under His purview maybe, or within His purview, but I don't think existing with one another, communing with one another is a state of control. We know that in our relationships with one another. If I'm controlling someone, I'm actually diminishing our relationship and actually will eventually fracture and break it. So,
yeah. Well, bring it back to books for a minute because,
sorry.
I'm totally tracking, and this is where my thought life is most of the time. And the greatest influences, I would say, in my whole artistic life are the Catholic writers. And I'm not, at this moment, Roman Catholic. I have some great Roman Catholic friends, but Frederick Buechner, Brennan Manning, Henry Nouwen,
Sure.
those are the three. Merton, of course. And then I've shared pretty openly about some years of deconstruction in my faith and how God used a particular podcast called Returning to the Mystics in my life.
Yes.
And I love Jim Finley and the things that he says. And I know that Richard Rohr is controversial to a lot of people, but Jim is part of the Center for Contemplation and Action. And God's used that for me, and I've gone back and studied the mystics and their experiences, and which were broad and mysterious and phenomenal, in a whole lot of ways, Teresa of Avila, and on and on. But so I think in mystical terms. I think in those terms, and just the pathless path, and the just that whole vein of things. So you're kind of talking my language. So if you had to pick one or two influences that cause you to speak the way you do, what would they be?
Well, that's tough because it's not the easiest reading. I do think Thomas Merton, has been somewhat influential for me. I think reading about Mother Teresa has been fairly influential for me. Some of Richard Foster's work after Celebration of Discipline, there's a group called Renovare that Richard Foster is a part of, and his son does a wonderful podcast. I've been a part of a couple of their book clubs, and some books are fantastic and some are really difficult, but if I had to be honest, and this may, ping someone as cliche, I've always loved scripture, but it was never held over my head. I just never was in an environment in my formative years. Now, have I seen those environments? Have I been inside those environments for an event or for a one-off or visiting church with someone? Sure, I get it. I understand how some people grew up with the Bible, but it just was never expressed as anything but love to me. And
you're so fortunate.
Lucky,
you are so fortunate. Absolutely.
I mean, I hit a lottery. It's just not how it happens a lot of the times in the United States. So when I open the pages of Scripture and I'm relating to my brother Jesus, I think he's a mystic. I just never saw anything but mystery.
Yeah,
and mysticism, because of the magical nature of his life and to some degree the abstractions of his words. I mean, parables, he's talking to us in parables. There's a lot of room for interpretation there. And I don't know that wasn't by design. I don't think, I don't think our lives were, I don't think God was trying to relate to us through control. He's trying to relate to us through relationship. I think wasn't that potentially the point of Jesus, is that we would see God as someone we can relate to rather than someone who's hovering above or whatever. So I now there's certain portions of the Bible that become more important to me than others in reading that way. And the Gospels would be one of them, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, different ways, different parts of them. And then, of course, books of wisdom. I mean,
Psalms and Proverbs.
Yes, and then Ecclesiastes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, what does it even mean? So, but it's gorgeous. Yeah. And I don't know, we try to sap some kind of meaning out of every ounce of everything, some definitive meaning, something that I can then stake a claim on.
Control again. It's all about control, yeah.
And our spirit life is just more fluid than that. It's not, at least in my experience.
What would it feel like to have 52 weeks of access to the right people in Nashville? People who've been making music for decades, people who can answer every question that you have about what pro-level music making is all about. Well, you can get that and more by joining NCS Community. Our community is a group of worldwide dedicated Christian songwriters who want what you want, to glorify God with your gifts and to get your music out there. I hope that you'll consider joining NCS Community today. Let's talk about that in reading literature, scripture, whatever it is, in terms of fueling your creativity and your songwriting, because the two ways that I feel the most inspired and wind up writing my own songs in whatever way are from reading and absorbing great literature, classics as well as, scripture. People that say they only read scripture, I feel like they're missing it. Love scripture, 100%. Nothing against scripture, but I feel like you're missing a universe, eons of universes if you don't read. I'm not a big fiction reader, but I probably could grow in that area. But whether it's theology or devotional books or mystical, things, the Book of Common Prayer has been an awesome source for me. I almost became an Episcopal priest a number of years ago. Didn't happen. Reading and then listening to music and listening to things that that are not necessarily in the heartbeat of Christian music, but even just any kind of music that speaks to me and reverberates in my soul, kind of beats the drum of my heart, if you will. I get inspired those two ways. So speak to that. I mean, in literature or music, where do you draw inspiration and get ideas?
Well, I think literature is absolutely wonderful, kind of hits on some things I already said, but I love reading. I think memoirs can be really an important part of reading. I think of a book called Educated that was real popular for a while. Tara Westover, I believe, is the author's name, but about some major spiritual abuse, and her family was like kind of living off the grid through their interpretation of Mormonism, and her growth out of that, which was real traumatic, but produced, it makes me think of, James, of producing character, count it all joy kind of thing. It was interesting, her interpretation of her experience. That was very hairy. So I think memoirs are important because they help us resonate with patterns of living that can be helpful to not just ourselves, but to the world. I think of a book called Secret Believers by Brother Andrew, who is a famous Catholic priest who worked in primarily Muslim countries, Islamic countries, in I think the 40s, 50s, 60s, a long time ago. And a book he wrote called Secret Believers was about the amount of Muslim believers becoming Christians through some really wild dreams, where Jesus was literally introducing himself to them in their dreams, and they didn't know who this was, but they knew Brother Andrew talked about someone who expressed elements of grace, etc. And they would go to Brother Andrew. Of course, he was over there really in a community involvement setting to not kind of get, to not rub against some of the Muslim control, and he would be able to identify who that was. Now, they already knew it within their hearts, but he helped put some language to it and then would help them find their path to either going back into their Islamic families, etc., and praying 5 times a day, but praying to the God or to Brother Jesus, kind of thing, or escaping their circumstances if that was what they wanted. But reading things like that helped me open my mind. Like, I don't know who someone's talking to when they're praying next to me with wrapped in Islamic garb. Like, it releases, it gives me another chance to release the gavel of judgment or stereotype and just open up again to all the truly mystical ways that God is reaching out to people, and all people. He didn't create me with any more love than he created someone in Israel or Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just and
But
and,
we're
and
so
no less love than someone in Hamas. No less love
But
or
we're
desire.
so conditioned. I mean, my eyes have been opened over the last decade or so, at how deeply biased and conditioned we are in the evangelical world. And I'm up in that too.
Sure.
And I've done my share, all the prejudice, all the hatred, and really the outright violence against people whom God has created in his image, and he loves them as much as you or me.
It's a hard thing because it's our human nature. I think when things get turned upside down, when we pit ourselves up against someone else, it started out well. I think we want things to work, and we want things to be good and right and just. I do think that's our first call that we want to express. But then in that, because we are human and have biases and stuff, it creates and our desire to control. So, that we walk humbly, with God in our practice of justice and mercy, which means really I submit my idea of justice to God, which means I can get out of the way and just love and serve. But I do think, John, it starts out from, I believe in people. And so I think it starts out in a good way, but we get all wrapped up in ourselves.
I agree.
To get to where you were going, yes, with the biases and the prejudices. And I think, because I've always loved the civil rights movement in America of the 1960s and then on into today. I've always been drawn to it. And I don't know why. I grew up in Texas in a community, rural, but that was primarily white and Hispanic. We really didn't have a lot of black influence. But but my mom grew up in New Orleans, my dad in northern Louisiana. They loved some Zydeco music and elements of Motown and stuff from their growing up years. They loved all kinds of music. But something about black music just, I don't know, it penetrated my spirit. And then I got into black gospel music, and then I got into kind of freedom songs from the civil rights era, which were also some white artists too, like Pete Seeger, et cetera, but all coming from the black tradition. And the resonance of those movements with what I see as the pattern of Jesus's life. When I read the Beatitudes, I don't see a lot of the Beatitudes in my megachurch expressed that way. I'm not saying in the lives of individual people, but when you're looking at collective movements, group expressions, you look back to things like the civil rights movement, and you look at nonviolent protest, just saying things are not right. You can beat me up. You can try to, eliminate me. I'm just standing here to say things aren't right.
Yeah.
The poise in that, and the love for the KKK member. For instance, in the documentary I did, Plain Spoken, which deals with race in the Deep South, Andrew Young is a leader from the civil rights movement. Really, MLK Jr.'s confidant was there on the balcony, the Lorraine Motel when he was assassinated. Has a profound experience in the civil rights movement. But then he went on to become a part of Jimmy Carter's administration as the first black ambassador to the UN, then became mayor of Atlanta during the Olympics era. Had some very interesting life that he's lived. But he started out as a minister like many of the civil rights movement leaders were. And he was walking out in I don't know what town they were in, to stand at the courthouse where some KKK members were going to kind of come up against their protest or whatever, their nonviolent protest. And he told his wife and MLK Jr.'s wife grew up together on farms. That's how he and MLK met. And so he told his wife they were really good shots because they grew up on a farm. They knew how to shoot well. And they had a little baby, Andrew Young and his wife did. Young married couple, and so he was going to this protest, and he didn't know how it would. He didn't know if the KKK would become violent or what would happen. So he told his wife to make sure and have the rifle loaded, essentially, and if someone tried to kill him, basically to injure one of the KKK members. And she looked at him. He's recounting this to me in the interview we did for Plain Spoken. She said, if you think for 1 second that human being with a white sheet is not a child of God, then you have no business being a minister. She said, I will not harm somebody. I think like the profound nature of loving our enemies. Like that's where following Jesus becomes something revolutionary, and we just don't want to do it. And I think we want things to be right. I look at the Israel and Palestine, that conflict, and people's opinions of how to make it right. Just eliminate Hamas, or whatever from either side. There's fault on all sides, always. And it's like, well, I can't, as a follower of Jesus, look at any one individual as anything less than created in God's image. We all go awry, again, I've surprised myself, like I've already told you. There's things I've done that I'm like, where did that come from? So we all have the corridors of our heart and the corners of our mind that have to be challenged and tested and weighed out again and again and again. And I just have found the greatest peace in my life, which I think comes from the deepest connection with God possible, at least in this context, is when I lay down the gavel, when I just not even loosen my grip, I literally drop the gavel.
All judgment and all, yeah.
It's just not necessary.
It's so hard to do. It just feels so impossible
because we're it's our anxiety, it's our depression. It's the root of all of that is control, in my opinion. And I mean, I don't mean someone's health is always tied to their sin. That's not what I mean at all. But the wrongness that we know of this environment we're living in does come from, it doesn't just come from genetics. It comes from our struggle to live how we were created to live, and that is loving each other.
And so in some ways it comes down to stripping away that which has been foisted upon us for generation upon generation.
Testing it.
I mean, I grew up in the South, and my dad was part of the civil rights movement as a young reporter.
Wow.
We were in Birmingham at the time of the Birmingham bombings.
Wow.
And we had moved to Memphis right after MLK was shot there. And our high school was integrated, desegregated. Pretty early, I dated a beautiful young black woman named Pam. Pam, if you ever see this, I really did love you, honey. She was so sweet, man. She was beautiful.
Yes.
But, and nearly got knifed for it.
I'm sure.
I mean, it was not good,
Yes.
but anyway, we grew up with my parents really trying to instill in us the right thing. My parents had become disenchanted with the evangelical church because they felt like they were on the wrong side of the civil rights movement back in that period. And wow. So I think back, I had no clue what I was living through as a child in Birmingham and Memphis, but it was very pivotal times. But when it comes to the message of Christ and the message of our music and the message that we need to be bringing, it in my efforts and opinion, it needs to be more than the status quo. We're telling the same thing, but not with the power of it.
Well, the power comes, in my opinion, from me expressing my not knowingness, my uncertainty, my doubt, which I think is paramount to establishing faith. If I can start every song thinking, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief, Even if I'm going to write a war cry song of, like of Victor, triumph in Jesus or whatever, which is not my go-to, so I don't know that I ever would. But even if that's someone's intent for that writing session, to still start with, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. That's every single one of us in this limbo that we're in. And so I always want to write from a place of the limbo, because I think most of the people, if I'm delivering a song in an audience, if I'm writing a song for someone else to deliver to an audience, I want that, resonance of humility, even through the things. I'm not saying we can't have assurances in our life, but even that assurance, like, that old question that, like in the old tract world, we used to pass out tracts.
Oh, yeah.
With
the Roman road.
Right. And one of the questions, if you died tonight, would you go to heaven or hell? And I've always thought, like, what would my answer to that question be? Even though I've never really suffered through kind of a dark night of, my doubt has never gone to that I don't believe I'll get to be with God, But if someone asks me, if you ask me, you died tonight, are you going to heaven or hell? Which is an odd question in general. I would say heaven, I hope. Because in the end, I trust God more than I trust myself. I trust Him to want what is best for me more than I know how to get what is best for me. And I don't think it's a trick. I don't think it's going to be a game. It's a game of, aha, gotcha, loopholes and stuff. I'm just saying I am trusting Him.
But see, that's what I love about Jim Finley on Turning to the Mystics, because he says over and over that if God stopped believing in me or any of us, we would cease to exist.
Right.
That God is believing and loving us into this moment and into the next and the next and the next. I'm God's idea. And so for me to say that my eternal, boy, I'm gonna go off here, that it's all about me believing
Just put
in
my
Him.
email for the comments.
Oh, Lord, you guys don't hate me for this. But it's more.
It's good to think on these
It's more
things.
important to me that God believes in me than even I believe in Him.
That takes the achievement off of me.
Yeah.
And our faith is not an achievement. We know that through Scripture. Those who
Right.
Scripture itself is pointing to that our faith is the river of life flowing through us. It is it is God.
And stripping away
Yes.
everything that gets in the way of that and
Yeah.
allowing that to flow so freely.
Well, and then I'm not destroyed by everything I do that is offensive to myself and to
Right,
others. It doesn't
right.
mean I want to carry on in behavior that's going to constantly be unhealthy for me. That will destroy us. That will kill us. But I don't have to. That's the shame card, right? Like that's the elimination of shame.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Boy,
It's just
okay,
not
so
to
in
me.
our first
Okay.
episode, we started with original sin. Now we're messing with people's belief in salvation. And,
Are
and
we,
all
though?
of- I don't know. I don't know.
I think I believe in people, though, and I know we like to hold to our tenets of faith that we were taught originally. But I think most people want to be released from unthinking. I really do. And I know that that's hard for some people. Some people I know are like, no, people just don't want to think. They just want to know. Okay, well, we all want some certainty and assurance. Sure. That's why we go to the doctor, to get checkups. But I really believe the Spirit of God is living in people and that they want to be released from control.
Yeah.
I think. I know it's hard to say that in America where we have
Yeah.
a lot of control over our
yeah,
lives.
Yeah.
You know?
Much of it an illusion. All right, I'm going to
Okay,
do.
what's
I'm going
next?
to.
What's
I'm going
next? Take a right
to
turn, a
rescue
hard
us
right.
out of this.
Rescue us.
For just a few more. I'm
You
gonna
can't rescue us. Only God can rescue
Only
us,
God,
brother.
I'm telling you. Well, I hope I don't get hate mail for this one. But anyway,
Send it to me. Send it. Andrew-Greer.com. Don't send it to John.
Y'all heard that. Now send it over to him. We'll talk about your music, because I know that as deep a thinker as you are, beautiful singer-songwriter, talk about your last release and a couple of those songs as we start to land the plane here.
Sure. You know, I've always, with music, I mean, music just is where we talked about this, about it's where I found my first connection with God. Opened up the portal to talking
The
with God.
fingers on the piano.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Those
that's
are beautiful.
just always going to be my background. And music has had several iterations for me, from kind of artist with label, artist with indie, artist, all those different industry labels with it. But I just always wanted to create music. And at one point in my life, I loved performing it too. That's not so much the truth anymore. I really love writing songs, and I love recording songs that are not meant for anybody else. And that's where this last record, Songs from the Dark, came from. I realized I still want to express some music myself. I just may not want to try to push it or tour it or like let it land where it lands. And so Songs from the Dark is entirely coming from that place. In fact, in one of the songs, the bridge is, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And that's the entirety of that catalog. Is just it's this expression. It's looking up. It's hands, palms open, not in control. The older I get, which I think is true for most of us if we're open to this, I just am neurotic. I do not have control even over my brain. Like where I had all the things in order for so long, and I was motivated to push that order down the line to whatever goal I had. I've just kind of given up goals, not in a depressive state or that we shouldn't strive to do things, to be productive, to produce. But I just no longer feel like I have enough merit on my own to make those things happen. So Songs from the Dark is like I'm a conduit, like I'm totally open and exposed, and you're gonna have to do the work in me and through me. Because no matter what I set my hands to, no matter what plow and field that I'm trying to work, it has got to be in cooperation with God. And what I find is that the genesis of cooperation, of communion with God, is totally in the dark. It's not knowing where the path leads. And, it's like, it's not no man's land. It's just that landing place of you through me. And it produces light, I think, because God is light, right? But it does require my positioning in the dark, I think.
I love that. It reminds me, I'm going to see if I can find
Okay.
it real quick, but one of my favorite author, theologian, preachers was Meister Eckhart.
Okay.
And he talks about the darkness, and we often cling to the light and we miss the gift in the dark. Talk about, while I'm looking for this,
Okay.
talk about one or two of the songs from
Sure.
Songs from the Dark.
Sure, absolutely. One is called Rescue Me, which I actually wrote quite a bit before the record came out last year, but became a real mantra. It was a couple of experiences I had. One, a conflict with a friend, one friend who her husband passed away, and there was a lot of conflict in that for her. And so, like I think the first verse, I might have to hum it, but I've been hurting my brother like I've been hurting my brother like there's no other way to respond. Building up an arsenal of accusations like I need hate to fight him off, And then it's this cry for mercy. The rescue me is rescue me from my intent. Rescue me from my form of justice, which is an exacting type of thing instead of instead of a pillow for my enemy to rest his head on, it's just an assault rifle. And I just want to change that, or I want to be changed by God's perspective of me and others. So that song really has become a mantra and became kind of the impetus for this record. But there's one song was definitively inspired by the pandemic in the sense of one of my friends who works at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital early on in the pandemic when there was just it was just a wild frontier, of unknowing. And she sent me this picture that was the medical staff on the helipad on top of the hospital, and their hands were just, some were stretched up to the heavens, some were in a prayer posture. Some of those, the brightest and most experienced medical personnel, on the planet, on their knees.
Mm.
And I wrote a song called Hands, which was just about our entire posture of hands held tight, in the end, the end of the song asked God just in his mercy to wipe our tears away.
Mm.
But it didn't ask for any solutions. It wasn't like, help us survive, or help us not be sick, or I feel like my prayers have moved. It's not that I won't pray for someone's healing or that I won't even pray for my own health and well-being, but to the extent that that is productive for God.
Mm.
And so in an era of a pandemic, I'm not necessarily just looking for us to get over it. That's not my prayer. But what is the experience
Mm-hmm.
giving us?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Am I that open to that, to discomfort and...
Right. To let go of the resistance to whatever is in the moment.
The fear.
To allow it. I think of it as a gracious allowing. Whatever moment I'm in, if I can lay down my resistance, you keep saying lay down the gavel of judgment, but same thing,
yeah.
lay down the resistance, stop trying to run away from whatever it is. So I had a heart attack about 5 years ago, and it was one of those where I made the mistake of letting people take me to the emergency room instead of calling an ambulance, because if you walk into the emergency room, you just aren't even there. You might as well.
Triage.
It is just not gonna.
Right.
They're not gonna pay any attention, and even if your head's halfway hanging off your shoulders,
you're breathing.
So
you're okay.
I had the worst part of the heart attack in the waiting room of the emergency room, and I remember because I had studied quite a bit of this by then that I kept telling myself, and my friend that was with me, he said, I heard you just kept saying, be with the pain, be with the pain. Mm. And that was the only thing that got me through, was I didn't resist the pain that was in my chest in that moment. And it was hard, but I was able to just keep breathing and be in that moment rather than run from that moment, and which would be the natural inclination to resist and run.
Yes.
But to be with and that was the first time I really had to put that to the test, but it worked. It got me through that moment.
Well, the resistance just caused a cycle of fear and anxiety anyway, right? That could have heightened your actual symptoms.
Exactly.
So that's a very interesting thought.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. We are such creatures of comfort.
Oh my gosh.
I am such a creature of comfort.
Dude.
I was reading... Corrie ten Boom's Hiding Place. I'd never read it before reading it recently. And I just think some of the, situations they were in, the trauma of it. Like,
oh my gosh.
I'm like, would I have mentally been able to stay checked in?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. But it was that thought that got me through that horrible moment that I don't want to ever be in again. But,
sure.
And I think about people that are tortured every day, and people who are slaves in any capacity, and may the grace of God be with them to deal with that. But wow, lots of deep topics with you. That's what I love.
Did you find your Eckhart?
You know what? The only one I found I didn't like.
Okay.
So
Meister.
There's a wonderful book, Meister Eckhart's. I think is called I don't know if it's called The Book of Darkness or something, but it's like that. I'll have to find it. But I give it away a lot to people. because I find that a lot of times we are in such foreclosure in our thoughts, in our opinions, that we aren't open, even as creative people. Here in a lot of our programs, I'm dealing with so many songwriters and singers and artists who feel like they have to present themselves in such a buttoned down or buttoned up, tight way that they're really missing out on many levels of their own creativity, of their own being, because they are in such a narrow bandwidth, of religious thinking. And so I love to blow people away. I love to blow them up a little bit. And Meister Eckhart blew up the people in the 13th century, and we're still quoting him today. And him and Merton and people like that have been embraced both by the evangelical as well as other traditions, and even the poet Rumi, who was a Sufi poet,
of course,
who is controversial, I guess, to some people who are pretty narrow, but wow, what a deep heart for God, and a mystic and a poet, very ecstatic poet. And
any box of religion can neither eliminate nor confirm what is true in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be truth that applies to our discipleship of Jesus
from many other traditions.
Oh,
for
sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be things in our culture of organization of how to follow Jesus is not going to be true.
Exactly.
It's a constant testing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Andrew, man, this is deep. I think I'm going to have you back
the third
again.
Part 3?
We're going to have to
leaving town today, John. So next time.
All right, next time you're back from Plains, we'll have you up, because it's just a delight to speak with you, and maybe we've stirred up some stuff today, and that's okay. I'm really okay with that, because we're all in different places in our journey. And I remember, a dozen years ago, I could have never had this conversation because I would have been so narrow in my thinking and so narrow in the way that I perceive the way to follow Christ. I don't think I could have had this conversation. So I'm very grateful for that, actually. I'm grateful for a season of depression and deconstruction that I had to go search for that bedrock again of what I felt, and I may still be way off and wrong, but it doesn't matter.
I'm not right about everything for sure. Yeah, I don't. And
you just ain't right.
I don't want to. Yeah, sure.
You just ain't right. But,
I love the rub. Yeah.
But you're a lot of fun, and thanks for being here on Song Revolution. You guys go check out Andrew's music, Songs from the Dark, Spotify, Apple Music. Check out. Do you have a website?
Yes, Andrew-Greer.com. Greer.
All right.
So easy to find.
And if you guys have any hate mail, send it to Andrew.
You can put the contact form on Andrew-Greer.com.
Send it to him.
That's all right. I'm fine with it.
He's good.
Yeah,
He's good.
I'm fine
but
with
anyway, thanks again, Andrew. And thank you guys for tuning into the show. Check out everything we offer at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. It's all with the heart to empower you in whatever vein of Christianity you're in, and whatever you're trying to do to glorify God as you love and understand Him. That's what we want to do through our programs, specifically through NCS Community. If you've not checked that out, jump over to the site, click the tab that talks about NCS Community. We meet every week, and we'd love to meet you this coming Tuesday. So thanks for tuning into the show, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on today's show. If you got some value, please help us share the love. Leave a like and a share and a good review. Be sure to check out everything that we have to offer you at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. We'll see you next time.